Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Black Girls Getting Their Shift Together. My name is Ursula B. I'm a Black girl just trying to get my shift together. Today is going to be great. It's a part two with Petra Gordon. And we've done a part one already with Petra. We talked about coping with grief and loss, but today we're going to do a continuation because we had such a good conversation. I actually had a lot of DMs, several DMs with people. It was relatable. So we decided to do a part two because we never got to the original questions because we just had such a great flow. And we're going to talk about non-death related loss. So it doesn't always have to be death. I mean, it could be the loss of a relationship, loss of a job, loss of self. I can't wait to talk to her about that. So if you all ever have any questions, let me know. You can always type it in and like, comment, share this video, audio version. Make sure if you give your girl a 5-star review. We'll talk a little more. First.
For the queen, sisters manifesting their dreams. Get your cream by any means and beam with self-esteem. Beauty supreme and Buddha walk so mean. The way you fit in them jeans, you eat your cornbread and greens. Dance or a doctor, red wine or vodka. Redesign your spot and redefine your mantra. Retwist your locks and realign your chakras. Doing your squats and getting closer to God, huh? Brunching with your squad or taking a girl's trip. Adjust your crown, you God's gift to the world, sis. Celestial body, drink your water. Meditate, sun-kissed goddess, heavenly order. Levitate, tribe of Ashanti, black girl magic, melanin popping, whether you ratchet or lavish, whether you bougie or savage, you a gift and a treasure. You got to love a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, man. These black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, dog.
All right, we are back. So remember, if you all have any questions you want to drop in the chat for Petra, just let me know and we can just ask some questions. But we're going to get right into it because this sister and we can talk and it's such a great dialogue. So I hope you all will be just as excited as I'm going to be. Hello again.
Hello.
How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Outside of the sinuses that I'm dealing with, I'm good. I'm good.
You know,
It's amazing.
and I meant to tell you earlier before we started recording, but thank you for still doing this because sinuses are no joke. I mean, unless I'm just a big baby and I don't want to be bothered. I just want to go to sleep when mine's active.
You know what? Yes, it could be very annoying and agitating, but I love having these conversations, so I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's so good. So good. So what did you think about part one that of our podcast that we did?
I loved it. Honestly, I
Yeah.
felt such a natural flow connecting with you and connecting with the audience. It just felt wonderful. And I'm so glad that we can continue this conversation because I'm an advocate of let's normalize grief, let's normalize death and dying and losses because it's a part of being alive and being human, right? And so there's no avoiding it. So let's keep talking about it. So I'm happy, girl. I could talk about it all day, every day.
Yeah. And as soon as you're talking, you're already dropping gems already. You saw me, I'm like, oh, that sounded so good. But I went back and I watched the episode, and it was so funny looking at my facial expressions just because I was learning in real time and
Right.
learning. I'm being triggered, but not in a bad way or
Right.
bad and good. You know, I was just having my human emotions. So I know other people were getting it as well. So I learned a lot in that episode, and it just really pushed me quicker, more to go and reach back out to my therapist. So I'm really happy about that. That I'm restarting therapy again.
Good. I'm excited for you.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, keep doing what you're doing. I as uncomfortable as this topic can be, but I also do know that I have run away from it, but I also know that there's still a lot to learn from it, because listening to you, I realized that we just don't talk about it. And I want to say in our community, but I think across the board, we just
Across the board. Absolutely
don't
across
talk
the
about
board. You're right.
it. You
You're right.
you you agree with that too?
100%. It is taboo. It is something that we don't want to talk about it because it forces us to deal with our mortality and the reality that our life can come to an end. And so no one wants to deal with that reality. It's easier to just avoid it and pretend like this won't happen. Or if it happens, it's going to be a long, long way down the road, right? But
Mm-hmm.
truth is, we're seeing men and women dying earlier in life. So it is something that we have to talk about and confront and have those, courageous conversations about.
So I'm glad you said that. Everyone listening, to hear more of Petra's story, click the link for part one. But Petra, can you just say, just like briefly, because I still want people to go back and watch it, when you
Right,
said, like, we think that we'll just live forever and ever and ever, like there's no end time. Can
right.
you briefly share? Because you all hear the details in part one about how it was the weekend with your husband, with the appointment with the lawyer, just to
Yeah,
make a point to let people know that you just never
absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. We went to see our lawyer to draft our will, and the lawyer had requested for us to come to his home the following day, which is a Saturday, to just go over it and sign it. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to use my Saturday for that. I'll see you Monday afternoon. My husband died Sunday night, so that will was never signed. And so that
Mm,
just triggered a whole bunch of rippling effects. And so I'm so intentional now. Don't put it off. Just go do it. Make that call, sign that document, make those adjustments because we can't guarantee that we have the next hour, the next day. We don't
mm.
know, right? So that changed my life. That moment in time changed my life.
So this is why coaches, therapists like yourself are so needed, because it can help push, it can just give somebody a pathway, and showing that it can be okay to talk about these topics, and
Yes,
that it doesn't have to be so taboo. Because I remember you saying how if, if you were prepared, things would have been a little easier, but we just are never prepared. We don't talk about it. I
right.
mean, I'm guilty of that as well, but that's why you're here. Yeah. So how do you deal with people who do have those overwhelming feelings when someone close has passed and they just don't know what to do? They're almost stagnant with it.
Right. I think what I find is that most people want to avoid the pain, right? And so sometimes what we'll try to do is numb it. Sometimes people use food, sometimes they use keeping busy. Other times it could be through alcohol or drugs or sex or whatever the thing is to try to not feel. And I think the most important thing when you are grieving and navigating a loss is to allow yourself to feel the feelings, to allow those emotions and the grief to show up versus trying to avoid it, versus trying to distract yourself from it. Because the reality is, after you try to distract and keep yourself all busy, your grief is still right there waiting for you until you're done. It
Mm.
doesn't disappear. So you got to confront it. You got to allow yourself to experience it and feel it and allow it to do its due course. It's not going to be worked through by powering through it or distracting yourself from it. It's about really being present with those feelings and allowing it to come and go freely without resistance.
But what about if someone who's grown up with, it's that learned behavior on to ignore your feelings and sweep everything under the rug?
Right,
You'll be okay, or we're a strong people. I've heard that before. We're a strong people. When I say we, I'm talking about melanated folks, us
right,
black folks. We're strong people. We can endure anything. I've heard that before. Yeah.
And you know what? That is a lot of people, but the reality is then it gets left unresolved and it's still
Mm-hmm.
there below the surface. And then you'll start to see how it starts to trickle into other areas of your life where it
Mm.
impacts you. I mean, there's irritation. Maybe you're not able to connect in your relationships the same way. And you start to see the effects of it. And you're like, why are things in my life not really fitting or meshing? Well, let's go back to the root. What haven't you dealt with? What have you glossed over? What have you swept underneath the carpet? What haven't you dealt with? And then
Mm.
it will come back to some of those past traumas, past hurts that have never been dealt with. So it's we can't ignore these things. They will just continue to remain until we deal with it.
Ooh, so while you were speaking, it reminded me. So, okay, I watched this movie,
Mhm.
but now I look at it with a different lens because talking to people like yourself and having these conversations. So, on the flip side, this person, he was he had some terminal illness, and he did not want to talk about what he was going through. So he never, I don't know if I'm even wording this right, but he never gave his family, his immediate circle family, the opportunity to just help him go through this transition.
Okay. Hmm.
And they had his ex-wife on, and they were interviewing her, and she was saying that he's always, like when you said just disconnected, how it can show up in relationships.
Right.
And then it wasn't until about the last 4 months of his life, maybe even 3 months of his life, when he started to, in his own way, try to connect with people on a
Right.
more secure way of connecting. And of course he did pass away, but when I saw it just made me sad because it was a shock for his family, because it's almost like that rushed grief.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess I can say it like that. Like everything came on so quick. Like, oh,
Right.
he's sick, so now we're trying to, help him through this. Can he get better? Oh, he's terminal. All these emotions. And
Right.
then on the other side, now he's connecting with people because now he's telling people in his family, "Oh, I love you. Oh, I really appreciate you." And it made me sad. Like, damn, he's got to wait to the end of, literally the end of his life, to
Yeah.
start connecting. And then his family members, his siblings, were saying how they grew up, back to what you said, he
Right.
grew up they grew up with their mom being emotionally abusive and disconnected. So
Okay.
now I'm seeing how, with
Yeah.
my new lens, how
Hmm.
it's generation, it can
Hmm.
be generational
And
on how we learn
right.
to disconnect.
Yes, I think what you just said is so powerful because that communication, it's a skill. And not
Mhm.
everyone has that skill of communication. Not everyone has an emotional intelligence to be able to have that self awareness, to connect with how they're feeling, how they're thinking, and being able to be vulnerable. I mean, that's not something that automatically happens. That's something that you work at, that you're intentional about. And so if you grow up in an environment where that's not even common, where would you even have the know-how to be able to do that? Right? It's something to say, yeah, I lack this and I want to develop this. And sometimes it takes someone to bring it to your attention, or you raise the awareness to say, okay, this is something I need to work on.
But don't you think that we do start out being vulnerable? That it's other people when we're younger, and the adults put that on us on how to not be vulnerable.
Yeah,
Because kids
I
seem so
do, I do.
honest to me.
Yeah, I do. I do believe that there are outside forces that influences that impact on how we develop, for sure, without a
Mhm.
doubt. It definitely does. But then, as we become adults, we need to be able to decide how are we going to respond and how are we going to continue to live out our lives. Will we allow what has happened in our childhood to continue to hold us almost captive, right, to a way of functioning? At some point, we got to be able to heal that inner child so that we can start to really function to our optimal ability as adults, right?
Mm. Ooh, I love what you said about healing that inner child. I never heard of that term. Anyone listening to my voice right now, I know there's several more audio listeners. Just search inner child work, shadow work, and just Google it. Petra, that was such a game changer about the inner child work and those wounds. I did
Yeah.
not know what so. Do you come across that a lot with your practice?
Not the clients that I have so far. I know a lot of the
Mhm.
clients that I have right now are they're not really, at least they may not be aware of their trauma, but it's not, they don't have the adverse childhood experiences.
Mhm.
Um, but there is that, more the type of trauma where the relationship wasn't the greatest, but there wasn't abuse. So maybe there was the cultural pieces where the communication was not as effective between the parent and the child, but
Mhm.
their needs were provided for, right? But there was things that were missing in terms of emotional needs.
Yes. And I never realized what such a key component that is because you know how we grow up.
Right.
What do you have to complain about? You are fed, you have shelter,
Mhm.
um, you have clothes.
Right.
Lord, heaven forbid you go to a private school. You have a paid education. What do you have to complain about?
Mhm.
And then that, which is huge to me, that emotional component. I
Yes.
never realized that as well. I mean, I do
It,
now, but I didn't know.
it's so, I mean, again, underestimate how much that can impact the things that are missed, that you don't receive, the affirmation, the security, the appreciation, that stuff. Oh my goodness. It could breed um, people pleasing and performance behavior because you didn't get that affirmation when you were a child. You weren't abused, they weren't verbally harming you, but
Right.
there were things that were missing that you needed, right?
That one word, that those two words, performance behavior.
Hmm.
Ooh, that's a good one. I never
Girl,
heard people please and put that way at all. That's a good one.
my girl, trust me, that is something I had to walk through myself 100%.
So was that a lot? Did that arise more after the loss of your husband or just in general?
In general, that has been something I consistently battle with, people pleasing, performance behavior, worth being rooted in the things that we do.
Mm,
Yeah, for years, for years. Yeah.
mm. Do you feel that someone with this performance behavior after the loss of a loved one, do you, whether if it's yourself or just from your professional standpoint, that arises more? Because sometimes people want to, what I've seen, I should say, how they want to comfort people more than comforting themselves.
Yes, 100%. And that came up for me, where I was more concerned about how people felt, how comfortable they were, and my attention was about them.
Mm,
And even how I grieved, it was like, okay, almost contained. And I was like, wait a minute, I lost a husband. Why am I trying to do all these things for other people when I'm the one going through? And I had to create boundaries because I was like, this is a weight that I could no longer carry. I think
right.
that's what really draw the line for me, the people pleasing and the performance, is when my husband died. It's like, I can't continue to function this way. I don't have the bandwidth to handle continuing this performance and doing all things to people, and I'm depleted. I
Mm.
didn't have the bandwidth for it. So I had to draw the boundary.
You know what? I just get so comfortable talking to you. Can we go back and can you
Sure.
let people let I just realized it. Can you let people know who you are and what you do? I'm all excited. We just got right
Yes,
into
I
it.
know. It feels so comfortable. And I love it. It's good. It's so organic and natural. But, I'm Petra Gordon, and I am a grief loss life transitions therapist. I am a certified transformational grief coach, certified grief educator. I specialize in working with widows, and I help people that are wanting to navigate life after loss so that they can live a meaningful and fulfilling life after loss. It's possible to grieve and heal and grow at the same time, and that's what I empower people to do.
So see, everyone, this is why I have this sister on here, because she doesn't just talk about it. She has literally lived through it.
Yeah, yeah.
Lived it, have this lived experience. And yeah, it's just not fluff. This is about that life for real. So when you talk about right, how do people balance memories of that loved one? Any tips on how they can do that? I mean, I know we talked about how healing isn't just, was it linear, you said before?
Right, grief is not linear, and I feel that it cannot be limited to stages, and it's so personal and so unique of how people respond and how they choose to honor the memory of their loved one, right? And so it can look different for different people, depending on the nature of the relationship, because not all relationships where there's losses was an actual loving and healthy relationship. So when it's a loving and healthy relationship, then maybe they want to keep the photos up. Maybe they want to do like a grief ritual. Maybe I just saw someone on Instagram lighting a candle and saying, this is you still with us, and we honor you. We still have a place for you, right? You're integrating that person still, their memory into your lives. Like you don't forget them as you're stepping forward. You bring them forward with you.
Wait, say that one more time, the last sentence.
You don't forget the person. As you're
Mhm.
stepping forward, you bring that person forward with you, their memories, things that you talked about, things that maybe that person wanted to do, and maybe you can live out that and be the legacy that continues to carry on that vision. You can find ways to continue to have them present even though they're not physically bodily here.
So, what would you say for someone who has a loved one that's no longer with us, but the thought of them is just so painful that they want to forget it because it's just so painful? Is that
Yeah.
healthy? I don't know if that's, yeah, is that healthy?
I think when you're in your stage of acute grief, and my rule of thumb is if what you're doing is causing more pain and
Mhm.
more suffering, then do less of it. So maybe it's too much to be going through the photo album. Maybe it's too much to have all the photos up. Maybe it's too much to have, all of his clothes in the closet, like, or all of her clothes in the closet, whoever this person is, and finding if there's things that are present in the home that's causing you more pain, then maybe for a season you don't have it there. Because we want to try to focus on the things that can bring peace and bring joy. And then maybe at some point you may want to reintegrate it and bring it back. But if it's going to cause you more suffering, then I would encourage people to do things that's going to cause unnecessary suffering and pain.
I like that. That actually is great. That's great advice. Because sometimes I think we want to grieve perfectly or because what it looks like to other people. Oh, that's the performance behavior.
Yes.
Mind blown.
Do you know I have had widows tell me that they pretend to be more okay than they truly are to make other people feel more comfortable. And that's not uncommon for people who are grieving. It's like because you're so uncomfortable and so awkward, I'm going to say I'm fine when I'm not really fine because you don't know how to be around me. And that breaks my heart.
Oh my God. That is so
100%.
true.
Yes. Trying to make people feel okay with the situation, and you're the one that experienced the loss and you're the one that's grieving. And some people continue to pretend until it actually gets real for them. Well, I'm actually not too bad now. I'm actually on my way to growing and becoming more like myself again. But the fact that they feel that they even have to pretend because of the sake of other people, that's a problem. That's a problem.
Wow. What have they done to get out of that for their own particular situation? Because I know it's not cookie cutter.
No, it's not cookie cutter. I think some will create boundaries for themselves. Some will have conversations to say, look, you know what? This is what support looks like to me. This is what I need in this season, right?
Mm.
Take out the guessing game because most people don't know how to support those that are grieving and say, this is what's helpful. I don't need unsolicited advice. I don't need judgment or criticism. This is what support looks like being present with me, holding safe space for me, allowing me to talk and share and not interrupting me and not judging me about what I'm sharing, and not telling me how you think I should be grieving or how quickly I should be moving forward or what that should look like. Allow me to
Ooh.
own my journey. But it's to have those honest conversations and that person that's receiving the information to receive it with humility and grace and not take offense.
Mm. That's a lot to digest right there.
Yeah, yeah,
That is a lot. And you know what? And it goes back to that communication that you talked about,
right.
to learn how to communicate with your needs and wants, because just holding on to that feeling like you're taking care of somebody else instead of taking care of yourself,
Right.
I'm sure that can come out physically as well. I mean, we're talking about the emotional part, but what about the physical part?
Absolutely. The feelings of anxiety, the uncertainty, the self doubt, the
Mm.
tension that you feel in your body, all of those things.
Oh my goodness. Um, what about uh, do the widows, have you witnessed that if they have children? Oh wait, we have some comments. If they have children, hey Shayna, it's my YouTube cousin.
Yay!
She's a
Hey,
great chief.
cousin.
Yeah, she's a great so look, when I have conversations like this, which is so needed, but then I have my guilty pleasures that I listen to. So her channel is one of them. It's just, okay, let me get some reality TV. Just that's a part of my self-care.
Girl, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. But do you find that some of the widows, with if they have children, that they become hover mothers? Have you heard that term before? Helicopter parents, just pouring it, still another facet of pouring into someone else than not their own self.
I'm sure there probably are widows that have that experience. I have not personally come across widows that have been doing that, but I'm sure there's
Mhm.
probably situations where that takes place.
Mhm. So let's get down to the hot topic. Well, I'm very excited to hear about ambiguous
Loss.
loss. So, from my understanding, it's a non death related loss that doesn't always involve dealing with the physical loss of somebody, correct?
Or not dealing with the death of somebody. So it could be a loss of a relationship.
Mhm.
Um, it could be a loss of identity. It could be a loss of health. It could be a loss of ability. But there's not an actual physical death that has happened, but you're experiencing a profound loss because there's a disconnection from whatever the thing is.
And it seems with a widow that, I mean, everyone has this, but it seems like with the widow, like that would be a a ripple effect, because if they already having the physical loss of someone, but then when you said having the loss of help, that peaks something. Because you think about it, if you have your partner in the house who's used to, I don't know, putting gas in the car, fixing the flat tire,
Right,
just yeah, that's what I was thinking.
right. And we refer to that as secondary losses. So the primary loss would be the actual
Oh,
death of the person, the spouse. The
right.
secondary losses are the things that you lost as a result of that death. So if you had a two-income household, now you're down to one. You used to parent as two-parent home, now you're a solo parent. Your husband maybe had a particular role where he did certain things in the home, and now you've lost that. So now you have to take that responsibility up. So those are some of the secondary losses that many widows have to navigate through and maneuver, which could be challenging.
Secondary loss. I'm gonna have to look that up later. So let's talk about the loss of relationships. How does
Right.
that look?
Sometimes it could be your relationships in regards to your friendships. Now, for instance, when you see someone experience a death, sometimes you lose friends. People get very funny where maybe you used to have couple of dates and you get together and have couple
Mm.
social groups, and now they stop inviting you to those events. You don't get the calls or the invitations anymore. People stop coming around, people stop calling and texting. And
Ooh.
so you can lose friendships because either people don't know how to be around you anymore, and it's easier for them to pull back than to actually learn how to be there for you, to walk with you in this journey. So that's another profound loss because you're losing people who were a meaningful connection.
And then if you do not have those communication skills, there's no conversation going on. Ooh, so I can see how the resentment may
Mhm.
build up or walls built.
Right?
Oh,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's painful because then there's just another loss compiled onto what you're already navigating through with the primary loss, which is the death.
ooh. Have you heard that a lot happening? People experiencing that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Losing friends, absolutely. Dealing with losing even the relationship with the family of your deceased spouse. So
Oh, I
they
didn't
may
even think about
stop
that.
having you over. You may not be a part of the family get togethers. And so they may have been a very big part of your life. And maybe, they just like, well, my husband's not here or my wife's no longer here. So then they separate. And so that's another thing that you're grieving because that was a shared experience with your spouse and now you no longer have it.
I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Huh. Now I think about it, I remember watching a long time ago with a situation like this that there was a spouse and
Right.
a partner had passed away. So now they've remarried, but they still had that yearning to have that connection with the family.
Right.
So he in the movie he would sneak because he didn't want to disrupt with his new wife, but he would
Right.
sneak and call the family of his deceased wife.
Right. Right. And you know what? It's wonderful when the relationships can maintain so that you don't have to experience more loss in that area. Like I have a great relationship with my husband's family, and I consider them to be extended family. But that's not always the case, right? Sometimes you get cut off, and that's another loss. Maybe you had
Ooh,
relationships with the nieces and the other aunties and sisters, and all that goes, right? So
ooh.
navigating through that loss as well.
Mm. Oh my God, it's like the grieving wouldn't stop. It's just when it, that's why you said the compound loss. It just things happen, situations. It's like
Yeah,
everything is connected with each other. Oh, that's so sad.
it can be. It can be. It can be on so many layers, truly.
Or if you move on and you do find someone, but then your deceased spouse's family looks, they frown upon you moving on, even.
Well, yeah. I mean, and that's another thing that I always feel disheartened about when you're in communities and the women would be sharing about, I met someone, but I can't post this on Facebook because I fear who's going to see it and the judgment. So I'm going to share it with you, who it's a safe space to share. So here's something that's wonderful that's happening. You found new love.
Oh,
You're taking those steps forward, but you don't have the freedom to express that because you're fearful of who in your immediate circle, your family or your deceased spouse's family, who's going to judge me, Who's going to say, oh my gosh, that was quick? How is it that you moved on so fast? And there's no timeline, like in terms of when someone feels ready to remarry or to reconnect with someone, right? But there is judgment, and then you're made to feel shame. And so for some of these people, they are trying to do this in secret because they're afraid of the backlash, which shouldn't
Wow.
be the case.
Yeah, the back. So that goes back. Do you think that can go back to that performative behavior? Like you still people pleasing because you want to
Yeah,
uh celebrate your joy, but let's do it in private.
it's still in private because I don't want to have to confront the judgment, the criticism. I don't want people to be offended or upset with me. So I'm going to just have this relationship undercover. And I just feel it's not fair. It's not fair.
Have you witnessed some of your people you've come across that they do move on fairly quickly after a loss?
Well, I mean, I don't feel that people really move on. I think what they do is they move forward. And
Ooh,
sometimes it could be um, quick, maybe within 6 months, maybe it's several years. It really all depends. Some women within a year, they're like, you know what? I don't want to be alone.
right.
Um, and when the right man or for whatever the relationship, another woman comes into a man's life, he lost his wife, whatever the scenario is, when they're able to find love again, they open their heart to it. And the key thing for that I have found is that for those that remarry, is that person actually makes room for that deceased spouse. So they do not force that person to stop talking about them, to forget them, that it's all about me, but they understand that I will always love my deceased spouse, but I also
Mm,
have room in my heart to love you. And so that person that's new, that's coming to the relationship, embraces that, is not intimidated by that, is secure enough to know I have your heart, but I also know that you're always going to love your first spouse.
yes. I'm glad you said that. I know someone actually told me that about their spouse,
Okay.
and they both lost their spouses
Mm,
and came together.
wow.
But the way the husband worded it, exactly what you said, and honored they create space for their lost spouse,
Hmm.
and they also created space for the spouse's spouse.
Right.
I thought that was so respectful and just
Yes.
kind
Yes.
and loving.
Yes. It's so
Never
necessary. Absolutely.
Yeah, I never heard of that before until I talked to him. And I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." Look. Okay, can I keep a transparent moment with you?
Go ahead, girl. Do it.
Now, this was a long time ago, but let me show you how immature, emotionally immature I was. And this was just someone I was dating.
Right.
And the topic came up, and I was like, I don't care if I go first, leave this earth. I don't want you to date anyone. You damn sure not going to marry anyone because you didn't marry me. And we,
Oh my God.
that's awful. That was so, and
That's
look,
hilarious.
that's not good. But I have said that, but this was a long time ago. But I feel that it's beautiful when two people can. It is not done with jealousy. It's just truly with
Right.
honor.
Yes. Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
I don't feel like we're here on this earth to just mourn and be in doom and gloom for a lifetime. I know it
No.
does happen, but not a lifetime. And
Not for a lifetime. No, I
mm-mm,
agree with you. I agree with you.
mm-mm.
Mourning and grief and loss is a part of life, and we're all going to experience it. But to be suffering for the rest of your life, that's the part we have choice around, right?
Mm.
Grief and loss is going to be painful, but the suffering that we inflict and prolongs, that's a choice. That's a
Ooh,
choice. And so we can choose how we're going to live out the rest of our lives and what that can look like. We have that choice.
So how would that look if someone wants to give themselves permission to have that life that we're talking about? They just don't know where to, because we talked about this last time, how a lot of us live in this victim in our victimhood
Hmm.
for whatever, however it happened, but it's
Right,
almost a comfort, even though it's not the healthiest.
right,
But
right.
how does someone give themselves permission?
It's a choice. You got to decide. You have to choose. You have to
Mm,
choose to say, you know what, I am ready. I can't even say ready because none of us are ever really fully ready for anything that we embark upon. But I'm going to decide that I want a different outcome. I'm going to decide that I want to experience my grief and my life differently. And I want others
mm,
in my world to experience me differently. And I'm willing to do the work, no matter how difficult it might be, because I want to experience something better, because I know it's possible. And that takes
mm,
courage. It takes courage to say, I need help. I want help to get that done. It's not
mm.
easy. I won't lie and say it is.
Yeah, that can be, but I was gonna say that can be challenging and difficult, but it can also be challenging and difficult when you don't give yourself permission as well.
I always say, choose your heart. Choose your heart. Both are hard. Staying in the same position and not allowing yourself to do that work to really move through your grief so that you can heal and grow is hard. Doing the work to work through some of those past hurts, those past wounds, and all the loss, that's
Mhm,
hard too. Both are
mhm.
hard. You got to choose which one you're willing to engage in
Right.
and which one gives the outcome that's going to best serve you. Because the outcome that best serves you is the one where you do the actual work to move yourself forward. When you're not doing the work to move yourself forward, then you're staying stuck. And
Mm,
that doesn't heal and get better on its own. It just stays and it trickles into other areas of your life.
mm. So let's talk about that when people need to do, I don't say need to, but when people choose and give themselves permission to do the work and they say, oh, I need some serious help. What are some signs that people can watch out for where they can say, you know what, I think it's time I may need some help aside from just talking to our close knit?
Right. I mean, everyone experiences their grief differently, right? I
Mm,
would say the most extreme stages are when the basic functioning, the basic care is not happening, right? I'm not able to get up out of the bed. I'm not able to wash my face. I'm not able to shower. I'm not able to eat. And that's prolonging, where I'm just not able to regain my footing to be able to do the things that I need to do to care for myself. And that like months are going by and there's no change. And now it's starting to really impact my mental health. I'm depressed and there's no movement. I would say at that point, if things are continuing to be a downward spiral and it's consistent and months are going by, I would say, you know what, it's time to reach out to maybe your family doctor, maybe looking into some therapy and start to work on regaining your life again so that you're starting to be able to start to care for yourself again. But that
mm,
functioning, that baseline, that's kind of where I say if that is prolonged and there's no change and it's just getting worse, and you're not able to function, you're not able to work, you're not able to communicate, and there's
mm,
no shifting in that, I would say, okay, maybe you might want to consider getting some additional professional help with this.
mm. And that it is okay to ask for help.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it is.
I
Yeah.
want us to retire. Just leave it in 2023. This whole strong black woman, we can do everything, which we can, but we don't have to suffer and do it.
We don't,
We
nor
don't have
should we, nor should we want to. That has been the lie. That has been the lie. That is not strength to have to do everything on your own and wear all the hats and carry everything, and feel like, put a badge on my chest because I've done it. That's not how it was. I don't believe that's what God intended for us. I believe that partnership happened between man and woman for there to be collaboration and help, whether
Mm.
that is a marital or, just in relationship, for us to be able to have partnership, to have community, to have connection, and to have support.
I
I
love
feel
that
like,
community and connection. Yes.
yeah, I feel like if God didn't want us to have that, then He would have just left it at that one person and nobody else. What's the point of
Speak.
creating more people? Why are we trying to do this by ourselves?
Right.
Come on, no.
I've heard someone say that they do it what we're just talking about because they've seen their grandmother do it.
Right.
Then she said she saw her mother do it. So now
Mhm.
she's instilling it in her children. But then
Right.
she started thinking, she said, I just remember my grandmother always looking tired and stressed.
Right. Right.
Then she saw it in herself. So she said, I just don't think that it's comfortable because of what I've seen. I really don't know if this is the right thing to do.
Right.
Working for after a while. I mean, her grandmother worked herself to death pretty much. She didn't want to do the same thing.
Good. Good for her for recognizing that and making a shift. Just because it's always been done doesn't mean it was right.
Exactly. I love that. Some things do not have to be rinse and repeat.
No. No. Just because, I mean, I've always done it. I saw great Annie and great grandma and Auntie Lou and everyone. I was like, and you be your own person and you create the new narrative. This does not have to be you. Worn out, stressed, burdened, overworked. It does not have to be our narrative.
Exactly. So when you talk about with stress with self, can we talk about the loss of self?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What does
Yeah.
that look like to you? Like how would you define that?
Well, there are elements, right? We identify ourselves through a lot of times through our roles. So
Okay.
if you're a mother, if you are a spouse, a lot of those roles make up our identity. When you remove some of those roles, and that's part of our identity, it's like, okay, well, who am I? What's my value? If I'm not operating and functioning in those roles, you strip that
Mhm.
away, what's my worth? And so it's really starting to get really connected to your purpose before you even engaged in any of those roles. What was God's intended purpose for you?
Mm.
Who were you to be when you entered into this world? Because you entered into this world as an individual by yourself. You didn't enter it with these roles of husband, wife, parent.
Right.
That stuff came over time. So when you experience a loss, it's really connecting about, well, what was the original intent and purpose for my life before I adopted all of these different roles? And now moving forward, who do I want to be? Are there some things that I represented in my life before the loss that served me, or are there things that didn't serve me well that I want to release to make room to become a better version of myself? And so there's
Mm.
an evolution that kind of takes place when you've experienced a loss, when you're willing to do that work. Let me say that.
Mm. So that goes back to giving yourself that permission because you can evolve if you want to, if you
Yeah,
choose to.
you choose to, if you choose to, right?
Because I see staying stuck in that loop that keeps you stuck. Literally, it just keeps you stuck.
It does, but the double two-edged sword for that is when you are trying to develop and evolve, you still battle with some of that guilt,
Well,
being
what do
able
you
to.
mean? In what kind of way?
Well, when you are growing and things are going well for you, at times you might feel guilty that things are going well for you because the person that you love is not here to be a part of it. And that could be whatever the loss is. Maybe it's the loss of your adult son or your adult daughter, and you knew that they enjoyed business, you knew that they enjoyed life, and here you are living and enjoying life, and you have moments where a wave of grief will hit you that they're not here to experience this, that they're not here, that they would have loved this, and here I am enjoying it. And so sometimes there's a peg of guilt around continuing on and enjoying life, and they're not here to experience it and enjoy
Mm.
it.
Would that be that survivor's guilt? Or is it
Yeah,
something else?
yeah. Survivor's guilt.
Ooh, almost. Have you experienced that? The survivor's guilt?
I initially did. I initially, I
Really?
did. I initially felt like there's things I would not have received or benefited had he not died. And so I had to reconcile the fact of I can't change that. It is what it is. And so whatever story that you create is what's causing that guilt. And so I had to dispel the lie and the faulty narrative around those thoughts and feelings because they weren't accurate. It's like
Wow.
I didn't cause the death. This unfortunate thing happened. And the fact that I get these benefits is not something that I saw after. It's just a natural course of what has taken place. And so I had to reconcile with what's really true here. And the truth is, I love someone that died, and now I have a responsibility to myself to continue forward, and I have a
Ooh,
responsibility to carry forth his legacy. And I can't do that if I stay stuck on, I shouldn't have this stuff. Well, you do. So what are you going to do with it?
exactly. Talk about that's the mind shift that you created.
Yeah,
Wow. Because I can see how someone would feel guilty, but when you said you didn't cause it,
right, right.
so why should you hold yourself back because of something that you had no control over whatsoever?
Correct. Exactly. Exactly.
Mind blown. I'm I never thought about it like that. So let's talk about what you have going on. There's a new widow, and they reach out to Miss Gordon. Like,
Right.
what's going on? Talk to me. Like, what? So I'm gonna post your Instagram while you talk about that. Well, you know what? Can I play one of your Instagram posts?
Yeah,
One you
sure.
had from 2 days ago.
No problem. Go for it.
Let's see if I can pull it up. Hold on. It's very interesting to me. Where's the volume on here? Oh, there it is.
And where you desire to be. And when we're specifically dealing with grief, loss, and life transitions, we're not trying to heal grief. You
Hmm.
can't fix grief. But what we're doing in grief coaching is really supporting you around your thoughts, around your behaviors, and helping you to reach the goals and outcomes in your life that you want to reach while you're grieving. And so if you've ever thought about coaching, if you ever thought about what it means to participate in grief coaching, I want to invite you on a call. Let's talk about it and see if it's a fit for you.
Hmm.
You know, when people think about grief support, they think about therapy, think about grief counseling, and maybe even grief support groups. But rarely do people think about grief coaching and how coaching could be a way to support you on this journey. And if I am to be honest with you, when I lost my husband suddenly and unexpectedly, I wasn't thinking about therapy, counseling, or coaching. I was just trying to make it from day to day.
Mhm.
But as I continued and navigated on this journey, that I decided to invest in myself by hiring a coach. And I found so much value in having a coach and being a part of a coaching community. You see, a coach is helping you to bridge the gap between where you are and where you desire to be. And when we're specifically dealing with grief, loss, and life transitions, we're not trying to heal grief. You can't fix grief.
Hmm.
But what we're doing in grief coaching is really supporting you around your thoughts, around your behaviors, and helping you to reach the goals and outcomes in your life that you want to reach while you're grieving. And so, if you ever thought about coaching, if you ever thought about what it means to participate in grief coaching, I want to invite you on a call. Let's talk about it and see if it's a fit for you.
Wow. Okay. I'm trying to get back to you.
Okay.
That was powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, can you explain some more about that video?
Yeah, I feel like because we do not talk about grief and loss enough, that people are not really sure around the different avenues in which they can receive support.
Mm-hmm.
I would say when it comes to grief coaching, if you are in the acute stages of your grief, maybe it was a few days, few weeks, you might not be ready for the coaching because coaching really requires you to do some work and some action steps and engage in the process. And the grief right now could be so raw and so new that you might need to just start with grief counseling or grief therapy.
Mm.
But as time goes on, there may be certain things and goals that those that have experienced a loss want to achieve, and they just don't know where to start. How do I carry this grief and take steps forward? How can I achieve certain things in my life that I struggle with? And getting that clarity and getting that support to bridge that gap and to have that help to create those goals. And how can I overcome obstacles that will come up as I'm trying to reach those goals? And so that's the benefit of the coach, because if it's a grief coach, they're coming through a lens that's grief informed and
Mm.
understand some of the challenges around working with the grief and wanting to experience something more in your life, and how that can be, there's can be tension and struggle amongst that. And so being able to really support them and validate some of those thoughts and feelings that are specific to grief and loss.
I love what you said about the support and validation,
Mhm.
because what we just talked about, how sometimes we spend so much time supporting and validating others, even in our grief, even if it's the acute, to have someone do it. I feel like sometimes we need that, especially if it's in that grieving moment, just that
Mhm.
comfort level of knowing that someone is here to listen, but to help you. I want to say move on. What's the better word I should say? 'Cause I don't want to
Move forward.
invalidate. Move
Yeah, move forward.
forward.
Move forward.
Forward. Me
Yeah.
move forward. And those little nuances, like the words you're using, I can see how after a while it can help shift somebody to propel them.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm. So how can people get in touch with you?
I am on Instagram, so Petra Gordon Ignites. I'm also on Facebook. Again, Petra Gordon Ignites. And I'm actually on LinkedIn as well, which is Petra Gordon. And they can also connect with me. I recently started to post again on TikTok, which is kind of weird because that's a whole different that's a whole different beast out there. Let me tell you. But I'm trying to get out into many spaces as I possibly can because I'm so
Yeah.
passionate about talking about grief and normalizing it and supporting people through this. So I'm trying to, move in different platforms to really connect with more people.
So I'll make sure and post your TikTok account as well. You're right. TikTok is a whole nother beast. And
Girl.
I have I don't post as much as I'd like to. No, let me stop saying. I just don't post as much, but I can stay on TikTok. I have become a professional chef because of TikTok. I know how to build a house. I'm a carpenter.
Oh
I
Lord.
we can do anything.
That's hilarious.
Don't let me get on that TikTok shop. Oh, the neck massager, like all of that. So TikTok is a community for everyone. So I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of engagement on it because this conversation does need to be normalized.
Yeah,
It does because it's gonna happen.
it will. It's not about a matter of if, it's when. We're going to experience losses. whether it's a death of a loved one or some other kind of loss. And we need to learn how to respond to it and how to be able to work through it and not ignore it or avoid it.
Hmm. Any parting words?
I would say that grief, loss, death, dying, all of that is a part of the human experience. And it's about us starting to have more conversations and creating the safe space to have those honest conversations, to talk about the fears, to talk about the worries, to talk about the insecurities around it, to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and to really start to just make it okay to talk about these things and talk about how we can support one another and what support can look like so that we can do a better job of walking alongside people while they're grieving.
Yes. That part one that we did together, I learned so much. And remember when I was telling you just the different updates, and
Yeah,
I found and I gave myself permission to what it was when I would talk to these people. I found myself stumbling over my words because I was like, okay, I want to course correct. And I gave myself permission to stumble over my words. 'Cause I knew that's the way I could
yes,
get it right.
right,
And yeah, and it was such it, again, it's those little nuances, but you never know how it can affect someone.
right.
So I encourage everyone to please go back and listen to our part one. It was a lot of gems. I mean, we were
Yeah,
just flowing like
yes, yes.
tonight, but oh, it was so good. So I definitely, it impacted me in a good way.
Good. I'm
Yeah.
glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah. I love to learn.
Me too.
I can
Me
tell, look at
too.
all those books behind you. Petra.
Girl, we gotta read. We gotta read. That's the way for us to grow, right? We can't stop growing. Can't stop growing.
Cannot stop growing. Did we do oh yeah, we did do it last time. Did we do a choose one? One has to go?
Yes, we did in the first
Okay,
one.
I thought so. I just want to make sure. Well, I have one question for you.
Sure.
What is what are two activities or just things you like to do for your own self-care?
Well, recently I started to do more of going to the nail spa and just allowing myself for that 90 minutes of just doing my nails and having myself pampered that way.
Yeah.
And I enjoy having a good meal, good meal either on my own or with good company.
What's your favorite meals?
You
Some
know
of your
what?
favorite meals.
If it's a West Indian dish, I love the Jamaican ackee and saltfish, fried plantain, dumpling. That's like my delight. I absolutely love that. Um, I love going to a restaurant. It's a steakhouse here in Canada, and it's called the Keg. And I love getting like a pistachio salmon with garlic mashed potatoes, and I have a
Mm.
crab cake for the appetizer. Woo, so good.
You
It's
have
so
it
good
down.
about it.
That sounds delicious.
Oh, it is. It so is. It so is.
It's something about having a meal out. It does not taste the same at home. I
It
mean,
does not. You're right. You're right. It right. In that little takeout bag,
it's
you want that
yeah,
hot. You want it tasty. You want it fresh. Yes, I'm with you on that.
exactly. Except for a West Indian meal, because that for me that does taste good at home. But
It
any
sure
other,
do.
because we know how to do it, right? We know exactly.
We know how to do that. You can warm that up, and it tastes just as good as if you were sitting in the kitchen or sitting at the restaurant. Ooh.
So
Oh,
good.
girl, you get me hungry now.
Oh my god! And I had some homemade sorrel. It was
Mm.
so good. Oh my god! And I put it in the freezer. It was
Oh wow, look at you. My mom makes that every what is it, Christmas? Yes.
She does.
Yeah.
Girl, send some to me. Or when you come to whenever you come to visit in the city here, just bring it. Tell mom, like, please just give me.
That's too
It was
fun.
so good. So now I have to probably get some this weekend.
Awesome. Go for it.
Well, we've come to the end. I You're always such a delight.
Oh, thank
Just
you.
a blessing that we cross paths, and it's
Yeah.
great. And your text messages are just as warm as they are when we talk.
I
You're
love that.
so
That's
kind.
good. Good.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
glad. I'm glad.
absolutely. And you know what, Petra?
What's that?
You are still a Black girl that has her shift together.
Yes, I love
This for the queens, sisters manifesting their dreams. Get your cream by any means and beam with self-esteem. Beauty supreme and Buddha walk so mean. The way you fit in them jeans, you eat your cornbread and greens. Dance or a doctor, red wine or vodka. Redesign your spot and redefine your mantra. Retwist your locks and realign your chakras. Doing your squats and getting closer to God, huh? Brunching with your squad or taking a girl's trip. Adjust your crown, you God's gift to the world, sis. Celestial body, drink your water. Meditate, sun-kiss goddess, heavenly order. Levitate, tribe of Ashanti. Black girl magic, melanin popping. Whether you ratchet or lavish, whether you bougie or savage, you a gift and a treasure. You got to love a black girl getting a shift together. Black girls are getting a shift together. These black girls getting a shift together, man.